Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here are your hosts, Brian E. Roach and Zach Metkler.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Brian E. Roach, the host who, as you know, does not like toast or any carbohydrate-based food products at this point in his life. But you know, I'm getting better. Maybe I'll like toast one day. Probably not. I have never liked toast in my entire life. So now that that's out of the way, today, Mr. Kuzma, my brother from another mother, has decided to take a respite and deal with being isolated and what comes along with that. And so, as he often does, stepping in to assist us in this time of need, our younger brother from another mother, the professor of football, one Zachariah Metkler, is here. Zach, how you doing, man?
Not too bad. Another pleasure to be back for another go-around here.
All right. So, you know, the draft is getting closer and closer and closer. And, you know, as you know, I did my first mock draft insanity pod about a week ago. And, well, maybe you don't know. If you don't know, then I'm telling you. If you did know, then you know. So, and in it, you know, I did a lot of craziness, as I usually do, and traded pretty much everything from next year, 2021, away in order to get a bunch of picks in this year's draft and pick a bunch of people that we wanted. And while that's fun and great, and I think we're going to try and get most of the draft crew together and put together a real, you know, round table kind of mock draft, the draft is still part of the subject for today. So the basic of our conversation here, Zach and I, is going to be the question as to whether the Steelers really will draft a running back in the draft and where we think they may draft a running back. And there's a lot of, I guess, you know, moving pieces involved in that. But I guess the first part of that is there a need to draft a running back this season? And I'm gonna give you my take. You know I've been JK all day for a long time already. And it's not just my Ohio State bloodlines that tell me I want JK Dobbins. It's just if he's there, I would love for them to take him. And, you know, I picked him in the mock draft insanity as well. But there are other running backs that I would be quite content with. The thing is, you know, I've been spouting this repeatedly, which is that while I don't dislike James Conner, I like James Conner, and I think he is a running back that can have success. But I think his style of play is not necessarily conducive to a long lifespan in the NFL, and B, staying on the field for 16 games. And because of that, and because his history has shown that he has had some difficulty in doing that, I doubt rather strongly whether the Steelers will bring him back after his rookie contract expires, unless it's on some kind of really insane cheap deal. And if that's in fact the case, then it might bode them well to draft a running back and have some backup protection, have a guy in the fold that they can start to groom to be the next guy. And that's been my thought process all along, and I think that's why I think it's reasonable that they may take a running back in the top part of this draft with one of their first two picks. What do you think about the likelihood at this point?
Yeah, it's funny because when this entire process started, you know, shortly after the season was over and the Steelers were promptly eliminated from contention in the playoffs, I thought running back would be something they'd entertain. I wasn't a fan of taking the position first and foremost, especially before we had confirmation about the compensatory third-round pick in return from Le'Veon Bell leaving. No matter how much people want to look at the Steelers as saying, well, they should employ a committee back, running back by committee personnel, that's never really been Tomlin's thing. Tomlin likes to have a feature back. He likes to have a guy that they can give 15 to 20 carries to, 25 carries to, and not think twice about. They want to have 3 carries here and 7 carries here and 8 carries here. They want to have one guy that can do it and like 1 or 2 guys that can spell them. They want to have a guy that can do it all. James Conner was that guy and still is, and for this season will be that guy as well, because when he's healthy, we've seen that James Conner can be an every down back. He made a Pro Bowl in 2018, and that wasn't a fluke. He earned that right to be there. And when he's healthy, there's no reason to believe that he's not a top 10, top 15 back in the league from a production standpoint. But that is a big issue with him, is being able to stay healthy. And if you can't stay healthy, I'll always say your best ability is your availability. And if you're not going to be able to be available, he's missed 9 games the last 2 seasons. In his rookie season, he played in 14, but he had nowhere near the amount of touches he had in 2018, and he still ended up on IR. That's 3 seasons that have been cut short by injury, 3 years in the league. And there's nothing that's going to sit there and convince me that 2020 is going to be any different either. So while he's healthy, you're not going to start dishing out millions of dollars to him, because you can't keep him on a rookie contract forever. So you're going to have a backup plan, because I think it's very likely in my mind that he's not going to be a Steeler after 2020. And that's nothing against James Conner as a person. He's a fantastic person. And when he's healthy, he's a fantastic running back. But if you can't stay healthy, the team's not going to pay you millions and millions and millions of dollars to play for 10 games a season, 13 games a season. So I think that is what's going to rule him out of here. And beyond that, I don't necessarily see a guy like Jalen Samuels as a feature back. I think last year he took a step back when he was asked to do more. I know fans will point to the 2018 Patriots game where he kind of exploded onto the spotlight. I think he's a very complimentary piece. He's a very good receiving back. I don't think he's the guy that you want carrying the ball 20, 25 times a game, 17 games a season. And who knows what you have with Benny Snell. I think Benny Snell's a fine running back, but I don't know if he ever has. I don't think he's dynamic enough as a back unless he changes a massive amount of his game to really ever shoot out and be this guy. So my stance has changed from them not really being a running back to thinking that there's enough running backs that could be had early on in this draft class that could be a bell cow every down back. I think the Steelers have done a better job than given credit for it looking at running back talent. I mean, Rashard Mendenhall will be looked at for his fumble in the Super Bowl. He really had played well to that point before his career kind of went off the wheels at that juncture. You see guys they've had undrafted free agents come in and contribute. They've had guys like Le'Veon Bell, who at one point was the best running back in the league. James Conner's been great. Samuels has done his part. They've done a decent job at finding running back talent, so there's nothing that makes me think that they couldn't draft someone if they had to. But I think it's a need that when you're not just looking at 2020 but beyond, if you're going to try to maximize Ben's window and you're going to try to maximize this offense after Ben, you're going to have to take a running back at some point in time. I think 2020, there's really the time to do it because you have Conner on the roster now. Get a guy in there to try to learn and grow,
Yeah. I keep coming up against this, the Benny Snell issue, right? Because there's a lot of people who absolutely love Benny Snell. And they're guys who listen to the podcast and have said in past comments that they thought Benny Snell was going to take James Conner's position, right? And that he had that ability. And I'm not discounting that he may. What I'm discounting is that I don't know that I've seen it yet. When you look at Benny Snell overall, because I am discounting Jalen Samuels. Look, I think the Patriots game was a fluke. I think they weren't necessarily prepared for him. When he got put back in those same positions, he was not nearly as effective as a pure running back. And I don't think that should be a surprise. That wasn't what he did in college either. He's a Swiss Army knife kind of guy, right? We've said that before. He's a guy that didn't really have a true position. He played a bunch of different spots, and using him as a weapon may be the best thing you can do with him. But even then, I'm not sure, that he's going to be able to do what it would take to be the guy at running back. But Benny Snell is kind of a different issue. When you look at his game and what he provides, when I watched him last year, and I said this many times, I just didn't see the burst that I want to see. Like, I didn't see him running away from guys. I didn't see him being able to have the escapability and break away from guys. And I don't think speed is really necessarily part of his game. Certainly, he's a tough runner. But when you look at what he showed last year, what would lead you to believe, if anything, that he could take on a bigger role with the Steelers?
I mean, the one thing that he has going for him is he's a compact running back, and he is downhill. He's never going to burn you. I mean, the guy ran a 4.66. That's not surprising. You watch the tape. He's not one of these guys that had a bad 40 time and, looks a lot faster on tape. He looks like a 4.66 guy on tape. Like that was the least surprising aspect of his game. And when you look at recent picks from running backs, that's kind of the standard. I mean, James Conner had a 4.65. So those are two dudes that kind of both came out there that were downhill runners that weren't going to wow you with their explosion. And you look at a guy like Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell ran a 4.6. So again, it's very Steelers type to go with that. But when you look at Bell, Bell's and Conner too, they've both developed the ability to one-hit cut, go upfield in a hurry, and their burst is there. Conner had burst at Pitt. He just needed to, get a little more explosive, and I think he did that between his first and second year in the league, and that's why you saw 18 go there. I don't know if Snell will ever be a home run hitter. He just doesn't have the same burst that Bell had or Conner had, and you don't have to be a home run hitter. I think a lot of people think of a running back as being a home run hitter as a guy like Kareth White, who, is going to run a 4.4 and just run right by. You don't have to be that fast to be a home run hitter because there's so much more that goes into that.
Right.
But Snell's not going to be the guy that's just going to blow past a safety and a cornerback and not get chased down from behind. That's just not his game. I think he brings a nice downhill, short yardage mentality, and I'm not saying he doesn't have a place on this roster. I think he does have a place on this roster, especially as a number 2 running back. I think in situations where he needs to be called upon to start, he could do that. I mean, against the Bengals last year, I think it was, whenever Conner was hurt, and he pretty much wore the bell cow title that game. He did effective. He had over 100 yards rushing, I think it was, but he wasn't efficient with it because that's just not his shtick. So he's very good. He's going to wear you out. He gets better as the game goes along. His team stop wanting to tackle him, because he's a strong guy. He's a compact, strong running back, but I don't see a guy that's ever going to be a 25 consistently, 20 to 25 touches a game type of guy. I don't think he's ever going to offer you the home run hitting ability that you want out of your number one. You see guys like Zeke and the top running backs. Obviously, I can sit here and name all the top running backs, but the one thing they all have in common is they could pop off a big run at any point in time. All the guys, Zeke, Saquon Barkley, Le'Veon Bell when he was in his prime, Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey. You're looking at these are obviously the elite of the elite. So I'm not saying you even need to have that, but that's the one common trait that a lot of, even a guy like Devonta Freeman when he was still at the Falcons, or Todd Gurley when he didn't have his knee issues. These were guys that were a threat. They weren't all 4.4. A lot of them were 4 or 5 guys. Adrian Peterson was a 4 or 5 guy, but they were just explosive. They were quick. They had this burst to get off and. I'm not trying to compare Benny Snell to Adrian Peterson by any means in his prime, but you get my point. He just doesn't have that burst and that explosion that you want from the unquestioned number 1 guy right now as we're having this podcast. And he might transform his body. Most Steelers running backs between year 1 and year 2 transform themselves, cut weight, get a little bit of speed, but he just doesn't have that oomph right now that I'm looking for.
Yeah, that's what's funny is our boy. Your namesake, sort of namesake minus the H, Zachadonia, Zach Flash. He and our wonderful millennial king Eric. I can't even say his last name. Man, I can't pronounce anybody's last name.
Eric Herman.
Yeah, Eric Herman. Why can't I say Herman? Pee Wee Herman. You know what? I'm gonna start calling Eric Pee Wee. Anyway. They both are under the impression that that's what's going to happen, right? That Snell's going to come in and drop some weight and become suddenly turn into this Le'Veon Bell-esque type running back that's going to be able to carry the load. And I just don't see that as a realistic proposition. He may transform his body somewhat, but just dropping weight does not, and I can speak from experience on this, just dropping weight does not necessarily make you faster. So, all right. So, that's when we look at it this standpoint, I think, if we were to envision the perfect season for the Steelers at the running back position, right now it would be that James Conner stays healthy. He's able to play a full season. but the likelihood, I think we both agree, of that occurring is small. And if that does happen, then they need a better set of backups than what they've had in the past. They need more versatility in that room. So that leads us to where we started this, which is the draft is coming up, and the Steelers have been associated with running backs in this draft. They've met with a couple, they've talked to a couple. Let's just look at maybe, I guess, the top 5-6 guys that look in this draft. And I know that I know you're going to release a big board at some point coming up. So I don't know how far you've gotten with this, and I don't know if you have a running back 1 through 6 yet. But if you took a stab at it, where would you end up with the guys that you see right now?
So it's actually funny. I actually do have my running back order is done. I'm done with all that stuff. So I'm looking at the top 6. I don't think every single one of them is a fit for the Steelers. I'm going to lead off with that because I think we get so caught up with running backs and what they offer. I think they are, to an extent, a dime a dozen nowadays. That doesn't mean every running back is a one-size-fits-all for every offense.
Absolutely.
Because I think, my running back 1, it's very close between him and Dobbins, but DeAndre Swift is my running back 1. I just think he's the most right now ready to play running back, but I don't think he fits what the Steelers do offensively, so I wouldn't be thrilled with them drafting a guy like him. I don't think he'll be there at 49 anyway. But that's just a prime example. Dobbins is my running back 2, and I think of the top-tier running backs, if he were to be there, I think he'd be the most likely one to go to the Steelers. I don't think he's going to be what you saw a lot of the times in 2019, his first year in the league. I think he's going to have a little bit of a learning curve. But I think he's an exciting running back option, and I think, in year by year 2 and year 3, he's a guy you could be seeing as a consistent threat in the league. The guy who I would have as my number 1 running back would be Jonathan Taylor. I can't. I've been saying this. I'll continue saying this. The wear and tear is a scary thing for me because if I'm going to draft a player at 49, I'm not expecting him just to be a rookie contract and move on when the wheels fall off type of guy. You want that guy to be a second contract player for you. You don't draft the guy in the first and second round as a 4-year rental and say, be done with you. Don't need you anymore.
Yeah.
So I think Jonathan Taylor fits what the Steelers do very well. I think he's, of all these top running backs, I think Taylor is probably the most scheme versatile. I think he can fit into a zone or a gap scheme type of offense and have success. I think his vision's good, his power's good. A guy his size running a 4.39 or a 4.38, whatever it is he ran at the combine, is impressive. I think he's going to be a very good running back early on. But when you look at the long-term projection, you're gambling that he's going to be able to stay healthy with all the wear and tear he's taken this time at Wisconsin. That's a lot of touches. That's a lot of hits he's taken. And he's a downhill bruising running back who's fast. And that's a lot of hits to be taking. So I got him at number 3. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is another guy. I know the Steelers met with him briefly at the combine, if I'm not mistaken. LSU's running back, good player. Like him a lot. Not sure of the fit, but he's another guy. I think he's a really, really good priority guy. The guy who I've been the most infatuated with when it comes to the Steelers is Cam Akers from Florida State. If I had to pick one running back right now to put money down, he'll be in the black and gold come August. It would be, or even come 2 weeks from now, I should say. It would be Cam Akers. I think he fits what the Steelers do. He meets all of the metrics they've looked for traditionally over recent years. He's built a lot like Benny Snell, if Benny Snell were actually fast and explosive. That's why I like Akers, and I think the Steelers have flirted with him a lot throughout this process. I think the only reason why he's not a more highly regarded running back is because Florida State's offensive line was a mess. They couldn't get anything going last year, and the fact that he was able to do what he was able to do behind that offensive line, you give him an offensive line like the Steelers, it's going to be night and day difference. He's a good receiver out of the backfield. He's good in pass pro. I like what he has to offer, and I think of all these running backs, he's the one that, if I had to guess, would be there at 49, it would be him, just because of those previous aforementioned concerns. So I like him a lot. That's my top 5 in this class, and Zach Moss, who I like as well, who could be had later on as theirs at number 6. But I just think of the running backs, Dobbins and Akers make the most sense. I wouldn't be surprised if either one of them was the pick. I just think Akers fits what the Steelers do a little bit more than Dobbins does, but I do like Dobbins as a running back.
All right, let's talk about because I'm not going to argue with you about your 1 to 6. I mean, my order may be different. I think pretty much the consensus is that DeAndre Swift is the top running back in this class. Whether everybody fully agrees with that or not, and whether they think Jonathan Taylor is higher than you have him or higher than I have him, I have the same concerns. You and I have talked about this in the back rooms. There is only a limited amount of punishment your body can take before it does start to break down. The fact that he hasn't had any severe injuries, and I don't think that he has at Wisconsin. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, he hasn't really.
Is a good sign, but it's also at some point it catches up to you kind of a thing. The funny thing about, and I can't say his last name, so I won't. The guy from LSU, Clyde Edwards. I'm just going to call him CE. Hilaire. He's he's a little guy. He's a short little guy. So is one of the other guys. Maybe Akers is the one that I'm thinking of too.
Swift and Hilaire, or Edwards Hilaire are the two small guys. Swift is 5'9", Edwards Hilaire is 5'8". So they're both two little guys. The Steelers don't typically like to go that small.
No, that's a little tiny. But hey, it slides in back there. But anyway, let's talk about. Let's start off with Cam Akers and talk about Cam Akers, because you pointed out some of the strengths and why you think he's a good fit. I'm just going to run down, strangely enough, I actually did some research. And I know, Joe likes to tout us as being the most unprepared podcast on the airwaves. And we just tend to fly by the seat of our pants. And that's mostly true, but I did a little research. And because Cam Akers has been placed in the Steelers' wheelhouse a couple times, and because they flirted with him, here's what I found as people giving knocks on Cam Akers, right? And you can address these after I talk about him. First is ball security. That he has a little bit of the fumbles and doesn't take care of the ball as much as he should. There's a concern that he's not great at. Wait, where was I going with this? Okay, there you go. He's not great at slipping contact. In other words, he tends to track contact more so than he does it away. Now, you've already spoken about the fact that Florida State's offensive line wasn't that great, and that can contribute to it what would appear to be not being able to get away from contact. When you don't have a great offensive line to give you big holes, you're going to get more contact than you would otherwise. But and then the other one of the top areas was that he does not tend to show a lot of chunk play explosiveness in his time at Florida State. What's your answer to those three things?
I think the slipping away from contact thing, I think, is partly because of the offensive situation at Florida State, and a lot of it, I think, just because of his mentality. I mean, like I said, he's a guy who, if you take a couple minutes to watch any of his tapes from any game he played in, there's going to be some film of it where he's just going to go through and he's just going to look to just pound you straight through your chest. He's not even going to bother trying to get around you. There was a couple plays I saw, I forget which team it was against. He's on the sidelines, he's going out of bounds, he still throws the shoulder into the dude. He's just that mentality. He wants to embarrass you. He wants to run through you. So I don't know how much of that comes down to his inability for slipping contact, because I think he doesn't necessarily have. He's not a burner. Like, he ran a 4.47. He's not a burner though, but he's quick. When he gets the ball and he decides where he's going to go up through there. If you don't throw a body on him, you're not going to tackle him. The fumbling issues are concerning, but I think he's not alone in this class. Jonathan Taylor has had fumbling issues in this class. I know Dobbins has had inconsistency with security. Not that he's fumbled, but you've seen times where he should have and very well could have. So I'm not going to say Akers is alone in that, but it is an issue when you're looking at him as a prospect. I'm not going to sit there and ever say that it's not. But I think those two things are more indicative of who he is as a player. I think he wants to run through. I don't think he's going to have the opportunity to do that nearly as much in the league because guys are bigger, faster, and stronger. He can embarrass guys at the bottom of the ACC. The ACC Coastal's not exactly a division to be afraid of, or the Atlantic, but that's neither here nor there. So I think you're going to see less of that, but I think he has the requisite traits the Steelers are looking for. What was the other point that you brought up, Ryan? I'm sorry.
Lack of explosiveness or chunk plays.
Yeah, the chunk plays, I think, is a lot of, second level blocking. I think he has plays where when he is able to get space in the open field, you see him get there. But a lot of the time, chunk plays that come from running backs come from getting through to the second level clean. If you can't consistently get to the second level clean, there's not many guys on level from all pro running back, like a Saquon Barkley type of guy, all the way down to your fringe running backs are going to be able to make chunk plays. I think the offensive linemen have to show the penchant to cleanly climb to the second level to spring a lot of these big plays. And if you can't do that consistently, you're not going to see a guy like Akers, no matter how explosive he is, get to that second level. Because when he did have the opportunity to do that, there's plenty of plays you can find him where he's streaking down the sidelines. He might get caught. He might, not make it all the way to the house, but he's getting plenty of chunks from that. He's getting a 20, 30, 40-yard gain because he's able to get daylight. I think once he gets to the league, if he gets a competent offensive line in front of him like the Steelers present, which is a massive upgrade from what he had at Florida State, I think you're going to see more chunk plays from him in that regard because he's going to get to the second level much cleaner. He's not going to have to do a lot more fancy footwork to get to that point. And when he does, I think that's where you're going to see him look to straight up embarrass a safety or a corner trying to make a play that's going to want nothing to do with him because he's he's 5'11", 220. He's a strong dude. He's compact, and he's looking to hit you. Cornerbacks and safeties don't allow to do that a lot of the time. So I'm not as concerned about those flaws as I think the fumbles are the most concerning thing to me. I think the explosive chunk plays comes more from the system at Florida State and not coming clean to the second level. And I just think the slipping contact, he's not elusive by any means, but I think he also looks for contact a lot, and that's something he's probably going to have to shy away from once he gets to the league if he wants to have any type of career.
Yeah. Okay. Now let's talk JK. And there's another one I'm going to throw in the mix because I think realistically at 49, the guys who are likely to be there, DeAndre Swift is going to be gone. I think that's just a given. I don't know that there'll be a running back that goes in the first round. This could be another one of those years where running backs simply don't go in the first round, but he's not going to slide to the end of the second round. But the guys who I think are realistically still going to be potentially on the boards, JK, Cam Akers, and maybe Jonathan Taylor. Maybe the guy from LSU too, but I kind of agree with you. I don't know how well he fits what the Steelers do. But so let's talk JK. I'll let you expand on why you think he might be a good fit. The funny thing is, let me just start with this. I think JK Dobbins has really good vision, especially when he gets past that first level. I think his vision at the second level is really, really good. But in doing my researches, one of the weaknesses that was brought up was that he has average vision and creativity. And I don't know that I agree with that because, as I said on the Insanity podcast, it's not like I don't watch every Ohio State game. So I've seen what Dobbins does. And while there's times when I think he can miss a hole, that's just true of anybody. And I think that there was some suspectness to the Ohio State offensive line early in the season. I think they got much better as the season wore on. But I think Dobbins has really good vision. I think he's really good at making decisions, and he's also really good in pass protection. He's willing to handle A-gap blitzers. He's nice at slipping out on screens, but I don't think he runs routes all that well. So why do you see Dobbins as a potential good fit, beside the fact that he squats like 7,000 billion pounds?
I think very much like Cam Akers, I think his mentality is the thing that fits the Steelers the most. I mean, he's not, like you said, he doesn't have the vision. Steelers fans want to hold on to vision because we saw what Le'Veon Bell was able to do, because I swear the guy had like 17 eyes that saw what every single player on the field was doing at any given moment. So I think we're going to hold on to that. But Le'Veon Bell's vision was amongst the best you're going to see on a running back. Dobbins doesn't have that, but I think when you look at what he's able to do, he's tough. I know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think he's missed a game while he was at Ohio State, which shows just longevity and durability, because I know there were times he probably was nicked up because he was very much, him and Justin, especially in 2019, him and Justin Fields were really carrying that offense.
Yeah.
With they had the receivers, Austin Mack and KJ Hill and whomever, Benjamin Victor. But it was really him carrying that run game to make these things happen. I think the thing that benefits him as well is the fact that he wouldn't have to go through that transformation year two. The guy is built like Zeke. Ohio State has a type at running back. It's very clear. They like compact, very, jacked running backs. They're yoked, they're lean, they're explosive, they're muscular. He fits that mold. You wouldn't have to see him go through that transformation in year two. I think he also was willing to run through people as well. He's not afraid to run his shoulder through you. He's one of those Ohio State running backs that would fit very well in Pittsburgh's system when it comes to just wanting to hit you, go downhill. And I think compared to Akers, which if you're worried about the chunk plays with Akers, I think the one thing that Dobbins does succeed with is once he does get to that second level, he knows where to cut, when to cut, and how to do it to get into the open field to try to pull off more yardage. And I think that's the difference between him and Akers when it comes to that point. It's just hard to gauge with Akers because you don't know if that's him or if that's because of that offensive line.
Right.
Dobbins, there's no question. He can do it. So in that regard, I think he's more ready from that standpoint moving forward. And I just think that when you look at it, he's not going to try to dick around. He's going to try to get downhill. He's going to get to where he's going through. So many running backs, especially the flashier ones, they dance around in the backfield. They're looking for the perfect hole to go through. Dobbins, you're going to tell him where the hole is. If it's a gap play, if it's a zone play, he's going to feel where it is. He's just going to hit there. He's not going to think twice about it. And I like that in a running back. There's no guessing. He's going to try to hit where he can go. He's going to try to hit downfield hard. He's going to pick up 3, 4, 5 yards if that's that, instead of losing 2 or doing a lot just to gain 1. He's going to try to do what he can to pick up the yardage, and I like that. I think compared to Akers as well, I think he's better off in pass pro right now. All running backs have room to grow in pass pro because very few teams in college consistently utilize running backs in that capacity. And just blocking against a guy like Von Miller or Khalil Mack or Aaron Donald is a lot different than blocking against some sub-tier, bottom feeder CUSA football program defensive end. It's not the same thing. So I think that's a thing that he is better at compared to other running backs in this class. And that's why I actually like him more than Swift in a lot of ways is because of his ability to do that. I think he's more scheme versatile. But I think he fits what the Steelers do as well. That's why him and Akers are 1 and 2 I wouldn't be upset with either pick. I think they both would fit well with what the Steelers do. Dobbins is explosive. He's fast. Like I said, he's very much what you want from an athletic standpoint of a running back that can do it all. And I think that once he gets into open field, I think he's a home run hitter. I don't know if he'll do it consistently, but he has that ability to get the ball in his hands, I think, and score anytime he touches it.
All right. And so, we both agree the biggest issue with Jonathan Taylor is the touches. I mean, over 300 touches in every year that he was at Wisconsin. That's almost 1,000 touches in 3 seasons of football. That is just a lot of wear and tear on a body. But let's throw that out the window. For the sake of the conversation, because let's say that Akers and Dobbins both, for some reason, go ahead of Jonathan Taylor, and at 49, that's the guy that's left. Well, let me approach this. In fact, before we talk about Taylor, let me approach this just from another angle and see if you agree with this. At 49, if you assume Swift isn't there, and even maybe if you assume he is. At 49, do you think that it's a wise investment for the Steelers to take somebody like Clyde Edwards-Helaire if that's the guy that's there? Or is it really a Taylor Dobbins Akers kind of a spot?
I think for the Steelers' benefit, I think it's one of those things. I think there's a couple guys that could be had a couple rounds later that aren't as polished and ready to go necessarily as those 3 guys are, that fit the system better and can come at a discounted price. I like Clyde Helaire. Don't get me wrong. I think he's a fine running back. In my mind, I don't see a guy that necessarily fits it because I think, he doesn't have the size. He's going to be I think he's a starting running back in the league. Don't get me wrong. He's a very good running back.
Right.
But I think I think he can fit both schemes effectively. In my mind, I think the height thing is a lot to overlook for a team like the Steelers that value size at the position. I think Benny Snell is listed at 5'10". I think he's a generous 5'10". But they value height at the position. James Conner's 6 foot plus. Jalen Samuels is, I think, around 5'11". Le'Veon Bell was obviously 6'2". They value size at the position more than Edwards-Helaire has. I think that he can wear out opponents because he is also another downhill runner that wants to run through. That's the one thing that a lot of these guys have in common is they all want to run through you, not around you.
Yeah.
I don't see him being any more dynamic of a player than Benny Snell is at this juncture. I think he's a better running back, but he's not as dynamic. I think that showed at LSU. LSU got by a lot of the stuff they were able to do because they didn't need him to be a superstar. He didn't need to carry the load when you have Joe Burrow throwing the football for you. But I think that he's not dynamic. So I would rather go with one of those three or go another direction or just trade back and get one of the other guys later on. Because I don't see Swift and Edwards-Helaire necessarily being the perfect scheme fit for what the Steelers look for traditionally.
Right, and I agree with that. All right, so that brings us back to the option that if the guys that they might target might be Taylor, Dobbins, and Akers. So from the standpoint of Jonathan Taylor, if you take away the contact and the number of touches that he's had, and I know in real life we can't do that. How he is he not like the most prototypical size kind of guy for the Steelers to look at? I know I've heard people mention him in the same breath as the Steelers many times. Does he fit the same mold in your mind as the other two guys do with the Steelers? In other words, is he as good or even a better fit, discounting the touches?
I think if you discount the touches, he is the best fit for the Steelers offense. I think he checks off literally every single box that they could want from a starting running back. And if they were looking for just a 4-year rental, I'd be running to the podium to turn in Jonathan Taylor. I think take away the touches, he would be my number one running back in this class. Right? No worse number two, because I think he's a pro-ready running back. He has the height, the weight. He has the explosion, the speed. The guy's a 4.38 at 226 or 30 pounds or whatever he is. That's crazy. That's crazy. Absurd. That's absurd. And he's durable. Even with all those hits and all those touches, he played and he played and he played, and that's incredible to me. I think you look at it, he's patient. He has the vision you want. If the cut is all the way at the backside of the line, he will stop on a dime and cut back across the entire formation, hit that hole if it's there. Again, he's going to fall forward every play. He's another guy. He's a bruiser looking to finish contact. I think he's a guy that after every carry he gets, and by the time you get to the fourth quarter, teams don't want to tackle him anymore. I think he had 10 or 12 or 15, something like that, 200-yard games at Wisconsin. I know they're a run-first team, but that's still absurd no matter how you look at it from a production standpoint. He has the production the Steelers love. And I just think that he's a very, where we talked about Dobbins is not creative, Jonathan Taylor is creative, and I think that just comes from his experience of carrying the ball consistently. If it wasn't for the touches and the fumbles, he has 15 fumbles in the last 3 years. That's not a good number.
Yeah.
In case you were unaware of that, so I think those two red flags deter me, but the durability, especially at a position that does not have a long shelf life. Like running back, he arguably has the shortest shelf life of any position on a football team. That with already coming in the league with 900 touches, that shows great experience, and it's a great sample size to know what you're getting with him. And that's why I think you can draft Jonathan Taylor confidently, and he's going to be a good running back for you. The touches are too much to overlook. But from everything else aside, to answer your question, hands down, he's a Steelers type running back. I'd love to see him in Pittsburgh if he had maybe 300 less touches. I wouldn't be complaining about it at all. He'd be my guy. I wouldn't even think twice about it.
All right. I got one more question about Jonathan Taylor because I noted this up on Lance Zierlein's NFL assessment of him. The last thing in his weaknesses line was this statement: play lacked confidence and energy against Ohio State in season. And I get it because Ohio State stuffed him. And so I understand, but probably because I'm just coming out of my mock draft insanity mode where I was forced to watch draft day multiple times. It reminded me of the whole thing with that quarterback in that movie, that there's a hesitancy. Is there any reason to have concern that as the competition level increases with a guy like Jonathan Taylor, that there could be a confidence issue with whether he can get it done at those levels, playing against the elite of the elite? Because when he played the best teams in the Big Ten, wasn't quite the same.
I could see it. I mean, I think he's a confident runner. You don't put up those numbers without that. But I think that Wisconsin-Ohio State back and forth. I mean, Wisconsin always wishes they could get into the dance and actually win the Big Ten. But they're not going to do it as long as Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan exist. It's never going to happen for them. I'm sorry to any Wisconsin fan listening to this. I like Paul Chryst a lot. I just don't see it happening. So I don't know if that plays no mental factor of it. I'm not as concerned. I think there's times where he could assert himself more as a runner. And when the box gets stuffed and they have no ability to really spread it out, I mean, they're not a passing team. Wisconsin's taken their pride of being a downhill run-first team.
Absolutely, yeah.
Years, so there's really once the going gets tough and Ohio State knows they can shut you down, good luck trying to pass on him, and then it's going to be frustrating him as a runner. I think coming into the NFL, there's not many teams that can't pass at all in the league, so I think he'll have the ability to not get that. But I do see where it could be a concern. You want to see big-time players make big-time plays in big-time games, and if you can't do that against, arguably your biggest rival in the Big Ten in Ohio State, as far as I'm concerned, you're not going to – that's going to raise a couple of eyebrows of why you couldn't get it done. And even if Wisconsin loses and you still ball out, I'm not going to hold that on you. You're a running back. You can't carry every single weight of that team on your shoulders every single week for 3 years. But the lack of production against there and the lack of seeming confidence is a reason to kind of ask a question of, is that who he is in big moments, or is that just one bad game on a otherwise nearly flawless resume?
Yep. All right, so now that we get to this, all right, second round, Steelers are on the board at 49. Dobbins, Akers, and Taylor are all on the board. And assume that they take a running back because they figure this is where we've got a veritable smorgasbord of guys that we can choose from. If you're the Steelers, which one of those three guys you taking?
Honestly, probably Akers. As much as I'd love to have Jonathan Taylor, if the Steelers had a better contingency plan on running back, I wouldn't mind taking Taylor, where you can guarantee he wouldn't get the touches. That's going to wear him out. But I don't think he can sustain 20 touches a game every game for 4 years on a rookie contract. I don't see it happening. I don't see how it can happen without him eventually the wear and tear catching up to him. No human body is designed to withstand that. Guys like Peterson can do it. But even he had injury issues at times during his career because of it.
Yeah.
I would say probably Akers. It's very close for me which one I'd rather have in Pittsburgh between him and Dobbins. Like I said, I wouldn't be upset with either one, but I probably lean more towards Akers because I think Dobbins, I can't look at his 2018 tape and just completely disregard it. He did not have a good year 2 years ago. I think his 19 tape showed a borderline elite player. I think in 2018 there was a lot of questions, and even in 2017 when he got the chance to contribute, there was a lot of questions about him. So I'm always skeptical of guys that have one really, really, really good year of production. That's why I'm moderately skeptical of Joe Burrow's ceiling. I think all players don't know if they'll get there. Different podcast topic. But I think Akers, you look at what he did with literally nothing, because Florida State was not exactly a banner offense to exemplify what you want to see in a college offense, and he was still able to be productive. Makes you think that when he gets an NFL caliber offense around him, like the Steelers, where you have a future Hall of Fame quarterback, you have a guy like James Conner, you don't have to get rushed into ahead of you, and if he gets hurt, you'll have hopefully enough experience to be able to pop in there, and you have a guy like Benny Snell who matches that competitive nature with you. And then you have skilled position players on the outside that can take a lot of that weight off you with that offensive line. I think you're looking at a guy like Akers could potentially skyrocket into what he is. I think his ceiling is a little bit higher than somebody like Dobbins. I think Dobbins has a high ceiling, but I think Akers could explode and pop off and be a very productive pro. And I think at 49, that's a risk I'm willing to take. I think Dobbins might be more of the sure thing, just because you've seen what he can do with good talent around him. I can't overlook that 2018 tape. I'm not saying he was a bad player, but he was very inconsistent at that point. And I just think, like I said, I think Akers has the speed and the oomph you want. He has the mentality you want. He's built for it. He doesn't have a lot of wear and tear on his body either, which I also think is appealing.
Yep.
And like I said, I just think when you're able to be as productive as you are in a bad offense, you actually get talent around you that should typically translate well to success, especially at the running back position when you actually have competent blocking. So my gut tells me to take Akers because I think his best days of football are very near in the future here. I think Dobbins is going to have a much more modest rise to be a top 15, top 20 running back. I don't know if he's ever going to be anything more than that. He might be a top 10 back, depending on which system he gets into. But I just think Akers has that ceiling of being a very productive pro. That Florida State we've seen with guys like Dalvin Cook and whatnot. So, maybe we'll see that from him. Who knows?
All right. Now, this follow-up question on that is, who do you think will be there at 49? Which of these guys, are still going to be on the board? Because there are other teams that need running backs, obviously. And while I've stated, I don't know if you think there's going to be a running back that goes around one or not. But who do you think will be there at 49?
Yeah, going back to that, I agree with you. There's no running back in this class, even though I think Swift is the top running back in this class and ready to start right now. There's no guys I'm pounding my fists on the table for and saying we need to get this guy in the first round like you were with Zeke, like you were with Saquon Barkley, like you were with Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey. The list goes on and on. There's no back in this class I'm sitting here saying we need this guy, or else it's a complete miss, and we're missing out on the next Adrian Peterson, next Walter Payton, the next Zeke, whomever you're looking for to be that guy, Saquon Barkley. I don't think there's that guy in this class. So because of that, I think there will be a guy like Swift that gets drafted in the first round or towards the tail end. I would not be a surprise at all if they don't get drafted until the 40s or late 30s. I don't see any guy that's really necessarily needed to be taken in the first round. I think they're all fringe first-round guys. Once one domino does fall, I think you're going to see a potential run in it. But I know I've ran the numbers before for Joe. There's only one classic thing off the top of my head, and that was, I think, 2014 or 15, where there were 5 running backs or 6 running backs that went in the first 50 picks. Traditionally speaking, you have 2 running backs that go in the top 50 picks on average every year for the last 10 years. And I don't think this class is the exception to that. So realistically, maybe it was even 2017 with Christian McCaffrey and all those guys. I think realistically this class, Swift should be gone. I'd be surprised if he's not. And I think Dobbins has a very good chance of being gone. If I had to gamble on one guy being there without any question right now, it would be Akers. And that's not that Akers doesn't deserve to. I just think there's not enough to warrant taking him before then because of the issue of Florida State's offense. Was he a part of that or was he not? You're taking a gamble with that type of information. I think Taylor also has a chance of being there because I think the wear and tear, especially now the fact that, this whole coronavirus is not enabled teams to get these guys in, to view them and get the official medical red check by their own doctors. Teams might be scared of seeing, well, maybe he has some lingering issues we don't know about and he played through. And obviously he didn't get red flagged at the combine or anything like that. So, those chances are minimum, but you still want to get your own doctors to look at these guys. So if I had to guess at which 2 guys would be there at 49, it would be Akers and Taylor for 2 different reasons. I think Dobbins has the next greatest chance of being there, but I think depending on where Swift goes is going to depend on when Dobbins ultimately gets selected.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think if Swift goes higher than anticipated in my view, which would be anywhere from 20, 25 down in the first round, then I don't think Dobbins is going to last until 49. I think one of those 3 guys will be there, though, yes. if not 2. And so that brings us to the next question is, will they draft a running back? If you're the Steelers right now, look, you and I have talked about this as well, and in my mind, it's very difficult to say because it depends on who else is on the board, right? But if a guy like Cushberry is on the board, or somebody else, and I know both Eric and Zaccadonia are all in love with Jalen Reagor, but I'm not. If somebody that's enticing is there, then they probably go in that direction. But where would you see? What do you think the chances of them drafting a running back? I'll start off by telling you, I actually think it's pretty high. I think that there is probably a better chance that if one of these guys is there, that's the pick, unless a really good, like just absolutely standout player on their board has fallen into their lap. I think this is very likely the pick.
No, I agree with you. I think the one thing that fans need to realize, because there's they draft a running back, he's not going to make a huge impact necessarily right out of the way. What position, as we speak right this very moment, are they going to draft where you're looking at a guaranteed starter of 49? I mean, right now, the needs they needed, they filled the tight end need with Eric Ebron. No tight end they pick is going to play over top of him or Vance McDonald.
Yep.
Steven Wisniewski is not the end-all, be-all long-term. It doesn't reduce your need of taking an offensive lineman, but he's security. And I still think there's a very good chance that you see Matt Filer bump into guard, and there's a position battle at tackle with Shkruma Okorafor and Zach Banner. If someone like Okorafor doesn't bump inside, like I know Ed Bouchette has hinted at, so I think they need to draft an offensive lineman because they don't have the youth. I mean, Marquise Pouncey, David DeCastro, Steven Wisniewski, and Alejandro Villanueva are all on the wrong side of 30.
Yep.
You have to draft a guy for the future and start grooming him. But I think because of that, you don't have to start him right away if he's not ready. Like if you were to go with a John Simpson or a Lloyd Cushenberry or a Matt Hennessy, you don't have to play him right away. So I think because of that, there's really no position on the team right now where they draft a guy at 49. He's going to be pushed in the start. Even if they draft a receiver like Jalen Reagor, you're looking at wide receiver 4 at the earliest,
yep,
if not later. So I mean, I think realistically that gives them the opportunity. Running back of all the positions is probably going to be the one where it's going to have the chance to make the biggest impact off immediately and potentially in 2021 when you're looking at the fact that I think there's a high likelihood that Connor's not here. I don't think they don't like rushing rookie running backs in. The last time they did was Le'Veon Bell, who was a premier running back coming out. So I think that's the only. So you give a premier running back time to learn behind James Conner and likely give him snaps when Conner more than likely gets injured at some point. Hopefully he doesn't, but you have to take the odds that he probably will until he proves otherwise. He's probably going to. You're going to get an opportunity for a premier running back to learn that offense and not be pushed in and then have freshness, which is why I think Jonathan Taylor maybe isn't a bad pick because he wouldn't get massive touches year one. So you have a chance to really rehab his body and not take that beating.
Yeah.
So I think realistically you have to take it because I think you look at the other needs. Offensive line's a need. I just went over that. Receivers a need because you don't know what's going to happen with Juju beyond 2020, but you still have James Washington, Deontay Johnson, and it's a deep class. I don't think you're forced to take one at number 49. And then you look at linebacker. They need a linebacker potentially for that depth because of the fact that they got rid of Metkevich and Barron. But I mean, there's no one probably going to be there 49 worth taking, and even then, Vince Williams will probably still start over him anyway.
Yep.
No corner is going to start over the guys that are there. No safety is going to start over the guys that are there. And no defensive lineman is going to start over the guys that are there. So there's no position on the team right now that I think you can look at and say whoever they draft at 49 is going to be an instant starter. So you have to take that position no matter what. I think that gives them the leverage. If they see a running back there they want to take, or any position for that matter, they're going to take him. But I just think running back is the one that has the most question marks behind it this season and beyond, not just in the short term. I think offensive line, long term, you have the need. Receiver, long term, you have the need. And now, in argument, because you can really improve that depth. But running back, we already went over Samuels. I don't see Samuels as a featured back. I don't know what Snell is ever going to be in the league. He might never be a above average cowbell running back. And Connor, I still don't see a scenario where he's back in Pittsburgh unless it's very, very, very cheap. And even then, he's going to get money from a team that really needs a running back. So he'll get $5-6 million on the open market minimum, in my opinion. So you have to look at running back, and the Steelers like running the ball. Ben likes having a running back he can throw and check down to, and somebody that could be there and be reliable to start 17 games a year for you now. It's going to be really weird having to say 17 games now.
Yeah.
But I think that scenario is why running back is a need, and I think you can very easily draft one later on day 3 or something like that. But you're going to be getting another Benny Snell. You're going to be getting another Jalen Samuels. You're going to be getting running backs are a dime a dozen. There's still a drop off in the talent. You can't expect every mid-tier running back and late-round running back to turn into the next Kareem Hunt or the next Phillip Lindsay. You can't expect that to be the norm. So the premier running backs still go between the first and third round. I think that's the sweet spot for the Steelers. Again, I very much think that's going to be the way they go this year.
All right. So the flip side to that question is, let's say somebody did drop and they don't go running back at that position, or the guys that they want are gone. To me, that spot 49 is too early to go for a Zach Moss. It's too early to go for an A.J. Dillon or any of the other running backs that are out there. But so if they have to move and they pick somebody else, they pick up a receiver, they pick up an interior offensive lineman or some other offensive lineman in the third round, because I still think one of those two picks is going to be a running back. Either that pick at 49 or that pick at 102, I think, is going to be a running back. What are you looking at in the third round if that's where they have to go because of just circumstance? Who's the guy there?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Zach Moss. I know I've said that on here before, and I think he is another guy that just fits what the Steelers do well. I think he has the health issues. He hasn't been able to stay healthy, and that's one reason why I think he's not highly regarded by more circles, and the fact that he's also a senior. He's the only running back I have in the top of my list that's not an underclassman. I think that's going to potentially scare off some teams too, because he has an extra year, so the wheels are more likely to fall off sooner than they would other guys, and he has the injury history.
Yep.
But I think realistically, he is another big back who kind of fits their mold. I mean, he's 5'10", 220. I know everyone's going to look at that 40 time. I don't think the 40 time is indicative of the game speed that he has. I know that's a very easy cop-out excuse. His tape does not match his 40 time, and I think that's evident with a guy like him when you've seen him break away from second-level defenders. I'm not saying it's a good trait because he's not fast, but he's not as slow as his 40 time would indicate. But I think he also has a very good – I think of all these guys, he's probably the most ready to be a receiver out of the backfield. I think he has very soft hands, especially for a big back like him. You don't see that very often from guys that are willing to go between the tackles as consistently as he does. I think he also has a very good ability to get into space on swing passes and things like that, where the Steelers, I know a lot of times, like Ben, loves to dump it down to a running back. He gets that ball and trusts his blocks, and he does very well in space for a guy who's as big as he is. So I think that kind of helps him out a lot. And again, he's not overly explosive. I think he's more so than Benny Snell, but he's never going to be a guy that you see bursting through the line that's going to be running down there. And that's why he could be had in the third round. But I think that he's willing to go and take the tough yards. I think he is going to be the top. He will be a top back at some point if given the opportunity to do so. And if not, he'll be a very good leadoff hitter for a committee position. But I think realistically he is. I think realistically that he is will be a productive back. I think he fits what the Steelers do well. And if it's not him, I do think A.J. Dillon could be there. I don't know. I think 102 is a little bit early for him. I don't know if he'll be there in the fourth round. But especially when you've seen guys like Derrick Henry do what they've done in the league at the size that they are, you got to be looking at a guy like A.J. Dillon, who's just a massive man. I mean, he's 6 foot 250 and ran a 4.5. Like, again, you see guys like Derrick Henry doing stuff like that with the success that he had last year. Teams are going to look for the next Derrick Henry. I think A.J. Dillon isn't as tall as Derrick Henry is, but he's built very similarly. He's a strong guy. He had a 41-inch vertical at 250 pounds. Come on. He had a 10-foot, 11-inch broad jump. I mean, the guy is an explosive player. He's big. He's bruising. He's fast. I think realistically, with the way the schemes the Steelers like to do with a lot of their gap stuff, I think he would really do well there. You let him get steam coming downhill, it's over. Good luck tackling him. No one's going to tackle him in the fourth quarter. I don't know if I don't think he's dynamic. I think that's going to hurt him, even though he is fast. You could tell he needs to get up to speed to get to that point because, again, he's 250 pounds, 247, whatever. And I don't know how good of a pass catcher he is because of the fact that, Boston College doesn't exactly utilize the pass game very much for the running back. So you're kind of gambling with that, but that's why he's not a premier back in this class. But I think he fits what the Steelers do very well. If the Steelers miss out on one of those top guys, I wouldn't be upset at all to see A.J. Dillon be the pick here in the mid-round. He's not going to be – I don't think he's ever going to be a dynamic game changer, but he has a guy that profiles very similarly to a guy like Derrick Henry, which I think is why teams that run a lot of gap stuff, a lot of power stuff, are going to have to be licking their chops to get him going downhill and see what they can do with him.
Yeah, now, because this is my take on this, is that once you get past the third round and once you get past a guy like A.J. Dillon, I'm not interested anymore.
Not to be a number one back for like surefire thing. He could turn into that, but you're gambling.
Right. And anything beyond that, I think is a risk. So, and I don't look at it like that's why I think if they go running back, it's going to be either in the second or the third round, because anybody beyond that isn't going to help them the same way that somebody like this could. And while Dillon may be more of a project kind, maybe need more time to get up to speed, maybe needs to drop a little of that weight to try and get a little quicker if possible. I think a lot of these other guys are going to be ready to at least take some of the burden if needed. If it falls down to that. The other thing I liked about A.J. Dillon is his comp is James Conner. Which is good and bad. I mean, durability issues are a problem there, but we'll have to see. Okay, is there anybody that sticks out as you'd like to take a flyer on them if it's the right place later in the draft? Is there a guy that you look at and go, yeah, he ain't there yet, but he could get there?
I think a guy like, I'm going to butcher his name, Siwo Olu. I butchered that already. Running back from TCU, Olonilua. I'm gonna put my flag in that one. I think he's another guy. He's a big dude. I know he's gotten comparisons to Le'Veon Bell with a lot of the stuff that he does. He's 6'3", 240, doesn't run like it. I think realistically he's not necessarily an exciting long-term project as a dynamic back. And when I compare him to a guy like Le'Veon Bell, that has a lot more to do with his vision. But I think realistically, he has the length. I think that he's willing to go and see where the crease is and kind of. And I think he doesn't have a lot of wear on his body. I think his vision helps him get there, and he's a big dude. He's not as powerful as A.J. Dillon, but he's a big guy. He's going to be willing to put his nose down and kind of find it. I don't think he's necessarily a every down back. I think that kind of inhibits his ability. But I think, depending on what the Steelers want, maybe they want a big guy. They don't want that dynamic back that we're all assuming they do. He's a guy to look at. I mean, I know there's been some connection with him, but you never know. And then a guy like Joshua Kelly, I think, out of UCLA, I think he's a guy that I could potentially get to that point. I know Matt Miller had him recently as one of his sleepers on his draft stuff. I don't necessarily agree that he's a sleeper because I think he has a very modest ceiling. But I think realistically, he's an interesting back. He had decent like I said, the Steelers like productive players in college. I think realistically that he's not exactly a explosive back, but he has decent speed, and he knows how to exploit guys that are coming at him, and by quickly moving and whatnot, he's physical. But I think you get outside of the first couple elite prospects, you're looking at more niche players. A lot of these running backs that go on the third day are guys that fit a specific role for a team that's looking for something in the terms of depth, or looking for something in terms of a committee approach. I think that's when you see some of the guys. I mean, you have guys that blow up every year that you never saw coming because they were missed for one way or the other. So I'm sure there's one of these late round running backs that will pop off and turn into a productive back, but you can't bank on that. There's not teams that draft for need on the third day of the draft to try to fill a need where they have no one, are setting themselves up for failure. You're trying to find a needle in the haystack. You're looking for the next AB, the next Tom Brady, the next Cam Chancellor, the next Richard Sherman. You're not going to find that consistently. The level of talent drop off is noted at every position outside of the first 100, 150 picks or so. So you're gambling. And I don't see many running backs in this class. It's not a spectacular running back class. especially on day 3, especially with the Steelers would want if they're looking for a bell cow type of back. So their best bet, which is why I think they're going to go one early. If they want to get a future replacement for Connor, they have to do it early.
Yep, I agree with that completely, and I'm staking my claim in it, and I was moderately joking early on, when I said JK at 49, but there was a little bit of thought behind it, because it's been months that I've been saying they're going to take a running back at 49, and the more that I have thought about it, the more I think it's likely, and it just depends on who's there and who's gone, and if the right guy's not there, I don't think they're going to reach for a running back. I think they'll take who they think is the best and most impactful player that they can get at that point, but I think they got to be leaning in that direction, just based on the way the team is made up and how it's going to move forward. So I think that will probably wrap this up, as we've now talked for a little longer than normal about running backs, and and for a draft class that wasn't that exciting. But again, I think that's. We'll see. We'll see in a couple weeks, because it's only a couple weeks away now. The draft is closer than we think, and while it may not be the wonderful extravaganza we're all used to, it actually will be kind of cool throwbacky for me. I'll be like, people just in rooms, and nobody's just all on phones and virtual. It's great. I like it. So it'll be interesting to see. We may do this again before the draft. Maybe we'll talk about wide receivers, because I think that's another possible position. Or maybe we'll do offensive line, man. That'll be fun too.
Oh, yeah.
But Zach, thank you again for stepping in, the professor of football. It's always a joy to have you here. We appreciate you coming on board again.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate it. And obviously, whoever thought running backs would be that exciting to talk about.
Hey, it is what it is, man.
It's the draft. It's the draft.
I know it's your time of year, so it's all good. As for me, we appreciate the listen in. We will be back next week, obviously, with more content. We greatly appreciate the comments. Remember to like, subscribe, and tell us what you think. And we will be back with more. And until then, that's going to do it for this time around. And as I like to always remind you, and especially nowadays, it's chaos out there. So be kind.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.